afternoon, everyone. On behalf of India Factoring and Finance Solutions, I welcome you to today's chat show on ESG and climate change. ESG is a framework which helps stakeholders to measure how a company manages risks and opportunities pertaining to environmental, social, and governance criteria. India Factoring is a premier trade finance institution registered with the RBI as an authorized dealer 3 in 2009, and it holds an NBFC factor license. Our flagship offering, the non recourse product, helps clients to avail factoring without the facility appearing as a liability in their balance sheets. Such niche, structured trade finance products from India Factoring offer ease and flexibility in managing working capital requirements of businesses by funding an agreed percentage of invoices soon after shipment of goods or after the services have been rendered. I am Ramanathan and I handle risk management for South Zone at India Factoring. I shall be your host today. Our guest on today's show is a seasoned ESG professional. Mr. Tushar Jindal has over 15 years of experience in which he has spent considerable time with the Climate Change and Sustainability Services Division of Ernst& Young India and has led the ESG function at two different organizations, Bundle Technologies and Arvind Fashions Limited. He recently shifted back to Ernst& Young and is working as an executive director there. Tushar holds a BTech in Environmental Engineering and a Master's in Business Administration from the Indian Institute of Foreign Trade, New Delhi. Okay, with that introduction out of the way, I welcome Mr. Tushar to the chat show today. Welcome, Tushar.
Thank you, Ram. Thank you for the opportunity and a lovely introduction. Really
Sure.
obliged and happy to be here on the platform talking about what I do, which is ESG. Looking forward to.
Sure. So, without any further ado, let's wade into today's topics. Let's start with the first question. Tushar, do you think that ESG is taking center stage for businesses today? Why is it important for businesses to focus on ESG, and when and why did you decide to become an ESG professional?
I think I'll take the second question first. I have been a nature lover since beginning, and my parents have been also the nature lovers. So all my childhood has been either spent in mountains or in forests. So I have been very closely observing how the pristine nature was affected by the human interference. And then when the education was to be something that I was looking forward to, what should I be looking at? That is where I came across this project by Ministry of Environment and Forest, where they were kind of trying to solve the problem of Yamuna River by planting bamboo trees on their banks. So I thought that there are actual solutions happening in this space, and there's a lot of work still to be done. So I thought, why not? Got into the environmental engineering with that, and have never looked back. So that's my, I would say, moment where I decided to be in this space. Now, coming to the important question, which is ESG taking center stage for businesses? I would say absolutely yes, because conventionally, what business has been focusing on for a large period of its existence is to drive and generate capital for its shareholders, and that has been working well to a certain period of time. But at the same time, it came at the cost of how we were interacting with environment, whether it was a negative impact that they were creating. It has also come at a cost of how social well-being of the entire value chain that is associated with it has been affected. But what has recently been changed, or what we have seen as a change in last 1 decade or so, all the stakeholders around the business, be it the investors, be it your customers, be it your employees, or the government agencies who are kind of interacting with the businesses on regular basis, they've all been very, very active and vocal about asking the companies about how they are interacting with their environment, how they're tracking how they're interacting with their environment. is the impact that they're creating only limited to the products and services and the capital that is generated, or should we also start looking at the environmental impact that is generated out of the business that the companies are doing? At the same time, how are we at this, kind of taking care that the entire value chain and the socio-economic, sector that is kind of associated with the value chain is also moved in the positive direction. So I think I would say ESG is definitely taking center stage. There are clear signs of climate change available with us, which kind of puts all the stakeholders back on the table, asking the relevant questions. The signs of biodiversity loss is very clear now. The instances of value chain partners coming back with issues of child labor or forced labor or not getting their minimum wages that they should be getting for a appropriate and a decent living has been also raised quite well in the past. So with all these things, it is pretty clear that the ESG has to take center stage. And at the same time, there are leaders in every sector in space, which has demonstrated also that this is not something that is required to be thought from a long term perspective. If the action is done today, the possibilities of mitigating all these environmental or social risks does exist today itself, and the opportunities associated with it can create a larger organization or a company in that domain in a very, very near future, which will not only generate more value in terms of financial value for the organization, but at the same time create a larger value for its shareholders, which will benefit company progressing more effectively against its peers who may not be on the journey. So I think my answer would be yes, and there are clear signals. Leaders have already demonstrated that if companies today are not looking in this direction, they may face an existential issue pretty soon, and they should all start looking into this direction and managing their ESG a little better than what they are doing today.
Okay, so what you are basically saying is that this is a more holistic way to progress rather than looking at only the commercial aspects of a business, uh, how soon or how much we can reduce our impact on the environment, and also involve the growth of all employees and all the supply chain partners together. So it's an all encompassing goal towards a progressive development of progressive world. So that's what I understand.
Absolutely, because we have to all work towards, creating businesses which not only generate value, they also generate environmental and social value, and create those structures where we have a better planet to also leave back for our stakeholders, be it our future generations, be it our biodiversity that we are interacting today, or are losing at a faster rate. So we have to holistically think about how do we want to do business, because if we continue the journey that has been conventionally done, it is a path of destruction that we all together moving towards. And then there could be a point where we start talking about how and where the resources will come in, how these impacts will start kind of start reflecting on our existence as a race, or the biodiversity that we have today with us, around us. Would that be something that we'll be still able to enjoy in the right spirit and in the right atmosphere? So yeah, I think that's how I would put it.
Perfect. Perfect. Okay, Tushar, there are some terminologies which have been doing the rounds these days, like for example, a linear economy and a circular economy. So, can you tell us the difference between a linear economy and a circular economy model? And could you also give us some examples of successful circular economy models being implemented?
Sure. So I think linear economy model has been the model of business forever. The business has been happening. When I say linear economy model, it's about take the resources, make the products or services, and at the end of their life, just dispose of. So in the entire process, the focus was right resources, right products, and just dispose them when they're not needed. Whereas when you look at the circular economy model, it's more holistic. It's about what are the right resources, till what time would they be available, are these the right resources versus the other alternatives that are available to us, how should we make the product, should it be with a mix of resources, a single resource, some resources which are already existing as a waste somewhere else, what should be the concerns from an environmental and social perspective that we should encompass while making those products or services, and then also taking ownership of how they are disposed or utilized within their life cycle. So a simple example would be when we are making a phone mobile today, right? Mobile is the most necessity that we all kind of carry around with ourselves. What are the products, what are the raw materials going into it? Is the product manufactured with environmental positive impact, or no negative impact? Is the social impact positive by manufacturing that mobile? And then eventually, within the use cycle, are we providing relevant opportunities for customers to reduce their overall environmental footprint? And then, is someone taking the responsibility of rightful disposal or appropriate disposal at the end of the life cycle, which is basically extended producer responsibility? So there are legislations around the world where we are talking about how does certain sectors should look into extended producer responsibilities, be it electronics, be it plastics. These legislations exist today, which kind of throw the ownership back to the manufacturers to look at how their product is manufactured and disposed. Now, going back to what is linear, linear is makes take, make, dispose, whereas circular is take, make the best way it can be with minimal impact of environment, dispose in a way, or make the product reusable so that disposal does not happen altogether. We make certain changes in it, it's reusable. If it's not reusable, can we design it to be recyclable? So the opportunity of not disposing it off or throwing it in a landfill, and there are opportunities of recycling certain components back to the cycle as a resource. So that's the model of circular economy, where we try and first of all think at the design stage itself, when we are contemplating the product, whether it's reusable that we should make, is it recyclable that we can actually think about, and then if that is not happening, come to the disposal stage and understand, today this is a waste, how can we or any other industry partner can utilize that as a resource. Now, good examples of how circular economy has been very, very successful already exist. Some of the examples are tire industry waste being burnt in cement kilns as a fuel. It has been a big problem as a waste stream for tire industries, where they have already struggled, or car industries with their paint sludges, how to dispose of that in an environment friendly manner with minimal negative environmental impact. With this transition or circular economy model, another industry partner came onto the picture, which was the cement industry, and they said that we can take this waste, burn it into the kiln, avoid coal that we were already using as a resource, and kind of solve a problem from a circular economy model perspective. Now, there are other examples as well where, today a shirt that I'm wearing, is it 100% cotton, or is it a mix of cotton and polyester? If it's 100% cotton, it's 100% recyclable. That means I can, shred this shirt at the end of its life and bring it back into the ecosystem. There are three ways of doing that. It's either recycling, which is basically fiber to fiber. So this shirt goes in the recycling mechanism, shredded down, threads made out of it, and maybe again a shirt or a t-shirt made out of it. That's called recycling. There could be an opportunity of downcycling. Now, downcycling is where, if this t-shirt cannot be recycled back into a shirt, can it be recycled or downcycled into a rug, or maybe shredded as the fibers that go into a soft toy, which has already been happening in the past. But downcycling is reducing the life of the product or utilization of the product by a degree. And the third step, which ideally is also something a lot of companies or a lot of startups are trying to do, is upcycling. So can you make products out of this shirt which are better than recycling it back to a shirt? So can we create a laptop sleeve which will stay for a longer period of time with me, or maybe a bag which I can carry around, or maybe my phone, bag. So there are opportunities, but the majority or the maximum impact that we can have in a circular economy model is at the design stage. Because if the product is not designed appropriately for reusability or recyclability, the battle is lost at that point itself. So I think that's the difference between a linear economy model and a circular economy model, where linear economy model has just been focusing on making products and making them available for consumers. Circular economy model thinks about the environmental and social impact and how a resource can stay within the life cycle or within that cycle of the product or the service, of being available again and again, thus kind of saving a lot of resources in midst of it, and making those resources available over a longer period of time. Now, the problem today is that we have started looking into circular economy model. Have we reached the point where we can say we are successful? Maybe in certain cases, like the example I gave, where a waste is already utilized in cement kilns. But is the waste getting reduced? No. So I'm just saying that we have achieved certain smaller steps in the right direction when we talk about circular economy model, but there is a lot more to be done. And every sector today, if they start looking into their products and services, would find ample opportunities where this can be implemented, circular economy model. And this has immense potential to bring opportunities back on the table for the businesses. Like I was saying, going back to my example, when you have to dispose your waste appropriately and you do not have this kind of model in place, you have to shell out a lot of money, right? Because you have to invest in the right kind of technology or find the right kind of partner who would dispose it off in the right manner. But then also there is a environmental impact associated with it, because either it will be kind of dumped in a landfill or again burnt at a lower temperature than in a cement kiln, which creates freons and other issues while they are burning, creating that environmental impact. Now, imagine that being converted into a resource. So now, if this is converted into a resource, probably what you're just spending on is the transportation cost. And maybe in certain cases where this becomes a successful model, you start generating value out of that waste from the secondary partner that is already playing a part in this. So from a cost and an environmental impact, it becomes a resource, reducing the environmental impact and start generating value. So I think that's the difference between a linear and a circular economy model. And what I have been trying where in whatever time I've spent in this space is to kind of put this thought process back to all the businesses that I've interacted in my 15 years of journey, that we have to start immediately looking at how we can shift from linear economy models to circular economy models, so that we can have much more impact through our products and services than we can have from reducing whatever we can reduce within our own operations. Yeah, so that's it from my end, Ran. Back to you.
Okay, so what I understood is a circular economy is basically based on three pillars: make, reuse, and recycle. So, am I right? So,
So I think, yeah, make it right with a lower environmental impact and higher or positive social impact, and then design it for usability and recyclability. That's second pillar. And third is, if that is not possible, you know, look at extended producer responsibility and ensure that whatever waste has to be disposed is disposed in the absolutely appropriate manner with minimal environmental impact. So I think these are the three pillars I would define it like that.
great, great, great. So moving on, plastic pollution is a big threat today. Everyone is aware of it, but Can you explain some steps which have been taken to address this issue, or probably which can be taken to address it better, to maybe improve its disposal in a better manner?
Sure. I think, first of all, I would like to say plastic is a brilliant product. If you see how it started in the past, the use case is brilliant. No other product has been able to come even closer in the last, 3 odd decades, in terms of the properties and the usability, or the affordability that plastic
Absolutely.
on the table, right? So first of all, I think let's acknowledge that. Then the second part,
Totally.
yes, plastic pollution is a big problem. We are all facing it. The entire globe is aware about it. Every country is trying to understand how they can address the problem of plastic. But I would like to put it in 2 to 3 different buckets. Okay. So one bucket is that it's a issue of habit. It's a culture issue, right? When you buy something which has plastic, do you have that inherent responsibility or accountability to put it in the right place, right? Or you have that habit of throwing it on the ground. So I think this goes back to my euphoria moment when I was in those forests or mountains that I talked about. I saw a lot of plastic everywhere, a lot of waste being thrown just out of context, out of
It's
habit
there
over there.
everywhere. It's there everywhere.
It's everywhere. And so that is one of the biggest problems. So habit and culture of people not being accountable for their own problem that they are creating, and now it's just getting added up as a problem altogether for all of us. Now the second bucket is that even in certain cases where people have very good habits, so let's say I become awakened, then this is my accountability, and I have to ensure that the waste is going in the right stream so that the recyclability and the reusability can take place. There is a lack of infrastructure. So the second big part is that we have never been able to put that relevant infrastructure. So I'm not when I'm talking about it, let's not generalize everywhere. Especially in developing countries, we have seen, and also in developed countries, and so to a certain extent, we have not been able to put that relevant infrastructure is in place for collection, for right kind of recyclability, and then bring it in back to the resource stream. Most of the plastic which gets disposed or thrown on roads and roadsides and near beaches is going into secondary streams, unauthorized markets. The rack pickers are picking it because they get a value out of it. They are throwing it back to source of stream which is not legit, and how it's coming back in what terms you don't know. So when I say that, your syringes, the plastic with your syringes, can come back to you in shapes and sizes that you cannot kind of acknowledge, and that is a reality that we all have to agree is existing today in a lot of developing countries. Now the third bucket, so one is the culture and the habit, the second is the infrastructure, the third is the policy, or the standards, or you say legislation around it. We have had the legislation of, in India specifically, let's say MSW since 2000. But have we been able to implement that? Have we been able to take, kind of right steps in ensuring that municipal solid waste, at that point in time, plastic was not separated out. So it was just municipal solid waste 2000 guideline. Have we been able to make progress? No. But in last 5 years, have we been able to make progress? Yes, from a legislation perspective. But is the world moving in the right direction from a legislation perspective? Still debatable. Why? Because I think the single-use plastic legislation, which was kind of an amendment to the plastics waste rules, came out almost 2 to 3 years back only. And then you know how the implementation was delayed for because of COVID, and then the states
Perfect.
got
Perfect.
into their own understandings of what is plastic. So Tamil Nadu banned cups, because paper cups which had 5% lining of plastic, whereas it was fine with the other states. So when you have this kind of issues that start happening, the end consumer or the business, they do not understand it. And then So third bucket for me is the lack of relevant legislation, and I would not say legislation, the implementation of legislation. So in some pockets and size and shapes, the legislation has existed, but have we been able to implement is another question altogether. And the fourth bucket is that, when you talk about these legislations, they are in that place. Are we talking to our consumers? Are the consumers aware about it? And a simple example would be when the single-use plastic was banned. I was, kind of very closely monitoring that because we were kind of trying to formulate our strategies with the organizations that I was working in. And one thing we realized is that we may do our part today at our end, at the organization's end, but there is a big secondary market which is unauthorized, just happening in a different setup, and they may own 40-50% of the market share today in that space. A biodegradable garbage bag versus a compostable garbage bag and a normal garbage bag. So we were doing all our efforts that the garbage bags have to be like that, and the garbage bags have to be only of this specific criteria, meeting what CPCB has defined as guidelines. But when we looked out in the market, when we went out in the markets in local Kirana shops or others, we still found 90 to 80% of the plastic biodegradable bags being available. And then when we went back to our consumers or our customers on a very, very random basis to understand whether they are aware the implication of that, the awareness level was very, very low. When I say very, very low, it was almost non-existent. For them, it was a garbage bag which is available and they're just buying it till the point it's available in the market. So I'm just saying these are four big problems that we are, struggling from. One is culture and habit, which is again maybe you can connect it back to the fourth bucket of awareness, the legislation and its implementation, and then the infrastructure. Another example, probably what I would like to talk about is when everyone started talking about compostable or biodegradable plastic that needs to be introduced, specifically, let's say in India and others. The biggest question that started coming, and that biggest question we started asking probably was, is there relevant infrastructure for composting which can handle plastic, compostable plastic coming in? Are there relevant infrastructure in place to separate out the plastic, because we haven't taken out plastic in entirety. We have defined certain spaces from where we are shifting from conventional plastic to biodegradable or compostable plastic. So now, is there infrastructure existing which can differentiate the waste being collected and, kind of taken it to different streams for disposal? The answer was no. And then, this solve any problem or create more problems? The answer was create more problems. Why? Because the moment a biodegradable plastic gets into a virgin plastic, the virgin plastic does not cannot be recycled anymore because it's a mixture now. It's a
Got it.
mixture of compostable and biodegradable plastic. The plastic which was very well recycled in a particular facility now cannot be recycled because now it has been mixed. And now can this be composted with the plastic? No. So I'm just saying that this is a problem holistically that we have to solve from all the buckets that I spoke about. And the first bucket is the most important bucket. We all have to start taking accountability of how we are managing our waste, how we are segregating our waste. And then I think we can push back and put a lot of pressure on our governments to put in the right kind of infrastructure. And we have that power. So I think that's my take on plastic pollution. Plastic, like I said, is a brilliant product if it can be brought in back within its cycle of recyclability. It has a number of recyclability. Having said that, I firmly believe that we have lost that tipping point where recyclability loop was making a lot of sense. We have gone beyond that. We have polluted and our oceans, our lands, and
Absolutely.
and the biodiversity as well. A lot of our whales and turtles and have been found with so much of plastic in their guts, and our cows and whatnot. So I think now we have to look at from a two problem perspective. One is how quickly we can set up that infrastructure for foreseeable future where plastic has to remain in the system, because plastic you cannot take out of the system tomorrow. It's not going to happen. It's there from decades. It's gone to a level where it has become a necessity for a lot of products. How do you kind of manage that problem that already exists? That is one part. The second is how quickly you can put in a lot of innovation, because at the end of the day, plastic was an innovation. How can you move from one innovation to another one to solve that problem that innovation has created because of our, I would say, lack of relevant accountability? So a lot of work has been done in this space. There are startups that I have come across are making containers out of wheat husk. They are making it out of algae. They are making it out of so many different things. It's just that if we are very serious about it, the right kind of platform and ecosystem has to be created by a public and private partnership for these startups to thrive, get that incubation right, and quickly ramp up from where they are today. Or look at reusability as a big solution. A lot of companies have come out now in open, which have solutions where they give you containers which are refillable or reusable, rather than pouches that you buy every time or bottles that you buy every time. Simple example would be, I think there's one company called Loop. They give you containers for your shampoos, for your other commodities, which you can take to a central store, or get the refill of your shampoo or other products from a larger container and take it back home, rather than buying a packet or a bottle every time which has to be discarded. Similarly, I think we were working with another company in Indian space where the food was now being sh- you know delivered in reusable Tupperware boxes. So what you can do is you can order from Swiggy and Zomato. The food will come in Tupperware boxes to you. You can eat, sign on the page and say that the box can be picked back on a relevant, comfortable time. The box will be picked back, very well washed, put back into the system. And that box has maybe 1,000, 2,000 cycles before it goes out of the system. So I'm saying these are certain things that we need to start quickly looking into it. Reusability, how we can move towards that from plastic, or innovation that is already existing, it's taken shape, how we can shape it up, pace it up, and bring it to a point where it is ready to replace plastic. Yeah, that is what I would say on plastic. Back
Okay.
to you now.
And a related question, Tushar, would be, I've been thinking about this. There are several reports which say that, the higher income countries, they generate more per capita plastic waste. But
Correct.
on the other hand, most of the plastic which ends up in our oceans or lakes or seas comes from, lower to middle income countries. So what explains this difference?
I think again, going back to what I just said, it's a problem of habit. So if you see, and infrastructure and policy. So if you look at infrastructure, that's the biggest miss over here, along with the cultural habit that we have in developing countries, which is to throw. Whereas in developed countries, there is a system by which waste is collected. There are systems by which is basically the infrastructure is segregated, is taken to a shape where it is either recycled or composed, or disposed of. So I'm saying these two are the major factors which result in a lot of waste from the developing countries ending up in oceans, whereas a lot of their waste is kind of taken back to the facilities which are appropriately designed and are capable enough to handle that kind of waste and dispose it more appropriately. I would say that being the major reason over here. But again, there was a good company that I was working with in India. They have been very, very strongly working, at least in the coastal region, with the NGOs that are present over there, with local people generating economic, value for those people, for those communities, and at the same time collecting a lot of plastic from there, putting it back into the recyclability, and making it available for organizations to take that plastic from them. I think they were also certified for the plastic was certified as avoided, going to ocean. So I think If we can work on those spaces, this problem can be solved. But the problem, basically, to your question, the answer is habit and infrastructure. If these two can be addressed, the policy can definitely take shape, and the implementation can actually take the last leg and kind of create that same atmosphere like a developed nation for us.
Perfect, perfect. Coming back to our primary topic of ESG, how do you think ESG reporting helps organizations, and how do organizations measure their progress, and how are impact assessments conducted?
Sure. So, see, how does a company, first of all, monitor ESG performance? For every organization, for every sector, first of all, we all need to understand that the issues that they are dealing in terms of E and S, G quite remains the same, could be very, very different. So, small example would be, let's say, for a pharmaceutical organization, animal health or animal welfare could be that they do not do testing on animals by which animals are getting hurt. Similarly, if you look at animal welfare in an apparel or a textile organization, could be how those feathers are plucked, or whether we are saying that we will not go into feather plucking of certain birds by which that garment is made, or we are not going to touch leather, or we are not going to touch on those fox leathers. We are going to be looking into that. Then it can be different for FMCG company. So I'm saying, first of all, it is important for every organization to understand how they are interacting with with the environment because of resources that they are plugging out. So once that is clear, that is what they should be focusing on. So this is basically knowing, first of all, where your impact is, what is where you are contributing more or significantly, and then trying to make sense how you can actually reduce that or mitigate that or negate that. The second piece is the social piece. Again, it's very, very specific. So, for an automotive company, it could be the accidents that they are having within the workshop. Plus, is someone doing a repetitive job standing on the line, assembly line, or they're just sitting down? How many hours they are spending versus someone who's working in an iron and steel manufacturing? For them, it could be hazardous. It could be near death experiences. How do you make safe working environment? How do you make the temperature of that area, or you give relevant breaks for the person so that he does not get exhausted, or the temperature of the body does not rise to a point where he sick, falls sick. So I think, first of all, important to understand what is material from an ESG perspective for an organization. Then, once that material issues are identified, it is important to understand where you are today, what your peers are already doing. Is there a gap? Is there an opportunity that your peers are already kind of tapping into, or your peers are already talking about a risk which you haven't thought about? How do you want to address that? That becomes your first layer of strategy. And then, if you are on the maturity curve where you feel that this is something that our peers have already achieved, what can be next for us? If you want to be in that leader's place, if you want to kind of spearhead that innovation in ESG, or kind of imbibing ESG more towards our business, what could be the next level of interventions or innovations that we should be investing into? So this becomes your overall strategy. And then reporting helps you to keep a track of it. So what you do is you identify where your ESG issues lie. You identify what needs to be done over a period of time. So from a short term to mid term to long term perspective, obviously you have to break it down. Otherwise, having just saying I will build a rocket to Mars 30 years down the line does not solve the process. The process has to be, my propellant will be ready within 5 years, then the engine design will be ready by, let's say, the eighth year. I will be making the outer shell of the rocket within 10 to 15 years, and then I will do my first test by 17th or 18th year. I'm just giving you very random figures in terms of years, don't quote me anywhere. But I'm saying, so once you do that, reporting helps you to analyze where you are every year in terms of all those initial issues that you had highlighted, or the targets that you had set for yourselves, maybe short, medium, or long term perspective. So that's more of an internal reflection for an organization. So that's how ESG reporting helps. But at the same time, the external stakeholders, they also want to know what the organization is doing today, and that is where the ESG reporting kind of helps you out to understand, give that understanding to your stakeholder base, how an organization is today interacting with the material issues, how they are performing on the material issues, and how they want to achieve whatever they have set out over the period of time. So I think it's a very good tool for internal reflection, and at the same time giving a lot of information to our external stakeholders, which are closely monitoring our performance, or are very vocal about how we should navigate our business or imbibe more of ESG within the business.
Okay.
Yeah. Over to you, Ravi.
So we have a question from our audience. This question is from Mr. Vinod Vasan.
Sure.
First of all, he thanks both of us for an informative session. His question is, why is biodiversity important, and how does India manage biodiversity hotspots in comparison to other countries?
Okay, so I think I'll answer the first question first. Biodiversity is whatever we see around us, be it trees, forests, the animals, and including us, right? So biodiversity is absolutely important. It's, the biodiversity is going down. That's another thing that we need to be very, very clear of. Be it the orangutans in Indonesia, because of the palm oil that's kind of crept into everything that we eat today, right from butter to oils that are being consumed. So palm oil forms a big chunk of that product itself today. And if you're aware that palm oil is a very, very debated product, and similarly there are others as well. The problem with that is not the product itself. The problem is how it's grown. A lot of rainforests are cleared by fire, where this plantation is done so that the plantation can be increased, the benefit or the supply of the product can be increased, because obviously our demand for that product is ever increasing. Population is increasing, demand is increasing, so supply has to increase. And that is where the problem starts. If we if we look at other spaces, so biodiversity loss is now a very big topic across the world, where everyone was talking about climate change and GHG emissions in silo. Everyone has already started talking about how biodiversity loss is also contributing to climate change. So a forest cleared for plantation is a carbon sink that you have cleared. The soil that has been cleared
Absolutely.
for vegetation was a carbon sink that you have cleared. The oceans are already getting warmer than what they have been. That means oceans on the planet are the biggest carbon sink that we have today. That means they are going beyond their capacity of absorbing more and more carbon. So how and the
And they're becoming
the
acidic as well.
yeah, they're getting acidic as well. So I'm saying that a lot of our and it's intertwined. So biodiversity loss leads to climate change. Climate change leads to biodiversity loss. We have to work towards our biodiversity management. And if right steps are not taken today, there may be a situation where we see a lot of species which are at the extinct or at the verge of extinction can get extinct. We can lose a lot of forest cover, which is basically our oxygen or our purifiers or our carbon sinks. We may lose a lot of our possibility of oceans, absorbing what they're absorbing and becoming warmer. We see, I've heard a lot of instances where whales and other animals have been washed up beaches in
Stranded on beaches.
numbers, stranded. Probably they were trying to get out of that, but there's no specific explanation to that. I'm just putting my logic into it. So I think that's important. We need to all work towards biodiversity immediately in terms of its management. TNFD, which is being kind of formulated today, is going to address. We are expecting it to address a lot of that challenge. The LEAP model, which it kind of suggests, which is locate, evaluate, assess, and then act on it, is going to be good. We have been, if you see, following that model in some sense when we did environmental impact assessments. Because when we did environmental impact assessments, we all kind of looked at if my current operation is in a biodiversity sensitive area? Is there a biodiversity sensitive area 5 to 10 kilometers from where my location? So locate, evaluate if we are interacting in any sense to that, in terms of, are we taking out minerals from a mine which is located in biodiversity sensitive area? Are we building roads which are crossing from biodiversity sensitive areas? Are we taking water from that area? Are we disposing our waste or our water waste over there? So there have been numerous ways which we have been evaluating, but I think it has to take center stage, like other topics have been taking. Like GNG has taken center stage, plastic pollution has taken center stage, biodiversity also should very quickly take the center stage, and we need to all address towards it. Now, how India is doing it better versus other countries, I would not be able to put a lot of light on that. But what I can say is, we, as India, have taken right steps in a lot of good areas, like the highways that we have recently started creating. We have started thinking about green corridors for those highways, which means that a lot of animals, when the highways were going through their forest area or their area of living, were getting on the way and they were getting killed. Similarly, railway tracks. So if we are thinking of green corridors for our railway tracks, our highways, enabling them to move across their geography without us interfering with them, I would say not they interfering us interfering with them. I think that's the right steps in the right direction. But yes, there are so many other things that needs to be done to make sure that we, first of all, put a pause to the loss of biodiversity that we are already seeing, and then make relevant interventions in terms of helping it, get restored from where it is today.
Yeah, I think you put it quite succinctly and quite clearly. I can also give an example. This Bandipur National Forest. It connects three states: Karnataka,
Right.
Tamil Nadu, and Kerala. A road just passes through it, and it's a very frequented road. And the forest department has implemented a right step that over the last 6, 7 odd years, say between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. in the morning, no vehicular traffic is allowed through the Bandipur forest, even though it's such an important interjunction between three states. Yeah, so
Correct.
so that's we have another audience question. This is from Mr. Samir. Mr. Samir wants to know, how do we motivate new entrepreneurs to break the inertia and come forward to embrace ESG and sustainable practices?
Okay, I think I'll try and answer this in a little different way. Uh, I see a lot of new entrepreneurs and a lot of startups who are trying to address just the problem of ESG and climate change. So when I look out, and in my last, I think, 5 years, I have interacted with more than 100, odd startups, which are having the right kind of business case to solve the relevant problems that we just spoke about, be it the reusable plastic boxes, be it an alternate algae based plastic kind of material, because when they were doing that testing, they said that we're just not replacing plastic, we're also, this has the property of enhancing the shelf life of your product. So I'm saying they're already into it. There are thousands of startups that already exist because they all understand that the investor base has been activated in last 5 years. The investor base understands the importance of ESG and how it's going to play a very big role in terms of the returns they are generating from their portfolio. And if they do not make that shift today, a lot of their portfolio may become extinct, or they may face challenges at that point in time which are going to be costly. So what I'm trying to say is that companies who have already imbibed ESG, who are looking at the opportunities coming from ESG, are already creating a very niche market barrier within their own industries, which is today maybe it's invisible. But if everything goes in the right direction with all the stakeholders putting their might together, it will be such a big market barrier within a decade or so from now, that if you have not started on that journey, you haven't started kind of looking into those risks and opportunity, you will falter. You will not have a place of existence within that sector altogether. So, answering to your questions, I think the entrepreneurs I've seen already understand that the biggest benefit or ROI that's going to come is going to come from solving climate change, biodiversity, and other ESG related solutions. Now, if they do not understand that, probably the investor base will play a bigger role. And I'm pretty confident today that the investor base has already been awakened to an extent where they realize that, and the funds flow we have already seen, they have exponentially increased in the last 5 years, going towards green finance or green projects or sustainable projects. So entrepreneurs, if they are looking at ROI, if they are looking at more and more market participation and more funding from investors, have to keep in mind that ESG has to be at the center stage of their business by a way, one way or the other. Otherwise, they may not find a lot of relevance, if not today, maybe in the near future for themselves. So that is what I would try and put it that way.
Okay, thanks, Tushar. Moving on, electric vehicles are the rage today. It's a raging topic, and lithium, which is the primary component of a electric vehicle car's battery, is a prized element today. But then
Right.
it is the lightest metal, so that explains its use, its widespread use in mobility vehicles. But then uh, you know, mining of lithium is also quite ecologically prohibitive. Like, for
Mhm.
example, in the lithium triangle of the world, the Argentina, Chile, and parts of Bolivia, it has been reported that groundwater levels are depleting and freshwater lakes are disappearing, and the ecological impact on the wildlife. The population of certain flamingos has reduced by around 11%. So these are the disadvantages of this amazing metal. So are there sustainable ways of mining lithium, and are there any alternatives to a lithium ion battery?
Okay. So I'll again answer this in two steps. One is about the mining part. You're right. Any mining, and be it lithium or any other mineral today, is has a lot of environmental impact. We all have to first agree that when we are going into mining, it will have an environmental impact. We can just minimize whatever it is possible today in terms of ensuring that we do it in the right way, close the mine when it's done with its resource availability in the right way, create the right kind of infrastructure while mining the material as well as while we are leaving the mining mine back. Specifically in case of lithium, it's a water intensive mining process because which is conventional way of doing mining for lithium. What I've read is that there is a direct lithium extraction technology that is also being evaluated today, wherein the utilization of water will be reduced by almost 90%. That's being
Amazing.
tested in one or two places, but will it be the technology to be used in the future? I will not be able to comment on that. Now, having said that, I think lithium ion battery has been a revolution again, like plastic in the past, and it has been improved from the versions that we had probably 3 to 4 decades back. But there are active, innovative, designs being thought of which do not include lithium at all, like a sodium ion battery or a solid state battery, where we are talking about moving away from a liquid base for the battery to a solid base. All of these things which I just spoke about, or a magnesium based battery, I think these are the three prominent alternatives today which are being evaluated as per my knowledge, for a lithium ion battery. One is sodium, one is magnesium, and the third one is a solid state battery, which are at an advanced stages of the innovation that has been kind of looked into. If solid state battery is commercially established in the market, it has much more life in it. That means a lithium ion battery which can has to be discarded probably at 8 or 10 years of life cycle, the solid state battery may long for 50 to 100 years as well.
Okay.
the charge that it may be able to restrain. So you may have to charge a lithium ion battery every day. A solid state battery may be required to charge maybe once in 6 months or a year. That is the claim that the company is making, because it can hold a lot of charge in that compact solid state mode. So there are innovations happening at advanced stages in all these spaces, but will it be revolutionizing and changing anything in next 5 years? I doubt, because even if you establish an innovation, bringing it to commercial production and making it available in the market takes its own time, and we haven't reached a point where these innovations are commercially established as a viable alternative. So we'll still continue with lithium. That's my understanding for some time, for electric vehicles. But there is already discussions around hydrogen vehicles. I read it was, I think, Hyundai who came out and said that we're not even going to go into electric vehicles, and we're going to start directly jumping onto hydrogen vehicles. I think it was Hyundai or Honda somewhere. So I'm saying, let's just not look within the sector or the EV itself. Hydrogen may replace the requirement of this battery altogether, if that technology is something that kind of takes shape in the right fashion. So I'm saying a lot of development, and coming back to my point, everyone is trying to understand what is the best investment. We all have limited resources, and I think Mr. Bill Gates say that very clearly, that the resources are limited. We have to identify, when we look at alternatives, which one is the best alternative from a long term perspective, rather than a short to medium term perspective, from trying to solve a problem. So I think that is how I would put it. Lithium will stay if hydrogen cannot take over in next 5 years. The other batteries are also at the advanced stages of their innovation. I would not be surprised if sodium or solid state batteries altogether replace lithium in some time. Yeah,
Great,
that's me.
great. I was also reading about the government's, green hydrogen mission, and certain automakers all over the world. Renault has published in its website about how they are developing hydrogen-based vehicles, and hydrogen is quite a clean fuel because when it is burnt, no greenhouse gases are released. So let's hope that things progress. I think we are coming to an end of today's show. Uh, I would like to, sign off with one very positive development. In the first week of April 2023, around 2 weeks ago, the Reserve Bank of India has notified a draft framework on acceptance of green deposits. So basically, this means that if you and I place a deposit, which is a green deposit, the bank would not be able to lend it to all sorts of companies. It
Correct.
would be able to lend it to a company which has a demonstrated, uh, you know, uh, track record of working on sustainable development goals. So the framework should be out for implementation by June 1st. So
Correct.
let's all move our existing deposits to green deposits.
I think HDFC, IndusInd Bank, and others, they already have an option of green deposits, even before this draft rule came out. But I think it's a very good step in the right direction, because green bonds have been primarily the vehicle of investment in this space. But if deposits also start moving in that direction, I think that will involve all of us at an individual level, and give us that sense of involvement, which is very much needed.
Okay, so I would like to, sign off from the show. Tushar, it was an absolute pleasure having you on the show with us. Thank you for the wonderful insights. I thank our audience for the time invested and for the interest shown in the show. India Factoring conducts these sessions on a regular frequency, and we should be back with an interesting session in some time soon. Meanwhile, this is me, Ramanathan, signing off. Thank you, Tushar. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone, for patience listening, and thanks, Ram, for this opportunity. Really enjoyed having this chat, and hopefully looking forward to more in the future as well.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Signing off. Right. Thank you. Bye bye.